Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to another EVE Online commentary. And in this video I'm going to discuss the capital and super capital changes that CCP is planning for the Citadel expansion. Not just a release, but it's actually going to be a major expansion that is planned for early next year. And for this video I think I should start out with explaining my perspective because I'm not a part of like a big Gnostic alliance. I'm not a part of capital warfare, and so I will probably miss a lot of nuances and details when it comes to changes to those ships. I tend to be more, well, pretty much as close as you can get to a solo player in EVE Online. I tend to only really play on a day-to-day basis with people that I know in real life. There's only like 4 or 5 of them, and they play way less than me. So most of my game time, my play time is spent doing stuff solo, going after goals solo, and capitals and super capitals are really something that is for major alliances in the game. And so my perspective will be probably from like an outside perspective a little bit. Anyways, let's go and check that out because all of this information has been coming out during EVE Vegas. But I think the first dev blog that they released is right here, reworking capital ships, and thus it begins. Now I'm not going to like read the entire dev blog verbatim. I'm just going to try and go over the things that I consider the most important here. And a really major one that we're seeing right here already is that they're actually going to make a new type of capital ships that are specific to logistics, and so they will take away the logistics capabilities of the carriers, and that's like pretty much a complete destruction of what is the current most popular, I would say, carrier doctrine in nullsec. If it's not the most popular, it's definitely the most well known. They are the slow cats who basically just repair each other, and the more ships you have, you get this big ball of carriers that can repair each other and then do damage. It becomes like almost an immovable object, something that is very hard to counter other than bringing more carriers that do exactly the same thing of your own. And they're really going to just pretty much destroy that. Because not only will the carriers no longer be able to like use the triage mode, which gives them a huge boost to how much they can repair, they're also they're just taking all of that away, putting it in a logistics capital ship, but they're also going to like limit how much you can repair one capital. Let me see if I can find the exact passage for that. It was pretty interesting. Let me see if I can find that. Nope, not here. There we go. Effective capital-based remote repair will be limited to triage only. Remote repping carriers and supercarrier fleets will be a thing of the past. The N+1 nature of these tactics encourage enormous blobs, and currently the best counter is to bring an even bigger group of your own capitals. The more carriers and supercarriers you can bring, the more your entire fleet can tank. Under the Citadel expansion capital changes, the bar to killing capitals is limited to what a single force auxiliary, which is the new capital ship, that is specific to logistics, in triage can tank. If you can kill that, eventually you can kill the entire capital fleet, assuming you can stay alive and keep them tackled. So it's gonna be a really big nerf to how the remote repping of capitals and super capitals is going to work. And basically I think that this does mean that they want to see these ships die. They want to see them be destroyed when they're used, way more than they are now. You can imagine this big blob of carriers that are all super tanked or can super tank on the fly, because that's the next part, that can all heal each other, and that can at the same time have drones or fighters out and do damage to the target. If you don't have anything similar to that, or even more powerful, like dozens of titans, then you're never gonna get on top of their ability to just straight up keep repairing each other. And with this, they're gonna basically put a hard limit on how much you can tank a fleet like that, or a ship in any fleet, and thus it will give even smaller groups probably at the cost of a lot of sub-capitals, for instance, but it will mean that they could break a ball like that. I think personally that that's quite okay. And they're also going to try to do something about the refitting while you're in combat, as you'll no longer be able to refit during weapons timer. Honestly, it's detailed here, and I was not aware that it was becoming such a tactic, such a powerful tactic in capital and supercarrier warfare, where basically you're targeted for the first time, so they're shooting your shields. Well, you're refitting for maximum shield resistance. Then they shoot through that, you're in armor, you quickly refit to best armor tank, and then finally in structure, you just go for as much structure HP as possible, just to make your carrier last as long as possible. And well, I didn't know that this was really a thing that was used super actively, but apparently it is. And I would say that that is a big problem, because that cannot be intended, that you can basically max out all the tanks on your carrier in like a single fight. So they're already going to disable you being able to refit while under a weapons timer. Personally, and again, keep in mind, this is like from an outside perspective, I would go even further. I would maybe put a timer on refitting of a module. You know, it would take your crew a little bit of time to do something like refitting in a combat situation, and then maybe even give it a little bit of a drawback. If you're actually going to start changing your armor tank, then maybe like for the time that you are changing it, half a minute, I don't know how long it would take, you're actually going to have lower resistances or something like that. So I think it's a good idea. I was not fully aware of how this tactic was actually being used, and I would say that yeah, it's something that you need to do something about, because no sub-capital fleet has this option to have like 3 tanks, all of their different defenses, shields, armor and structure be optimized in a single fight. And personally, I'd say take that out, make sure that that's not possible anymore. There's no point to it. So next up, this is a really big one. No capital will have complete electronic warfare immunity. So at the moment they're toying with something like a pretty big base sensor warp strength, like 20 to 50 for super carriers and titans. But if you can bring like 60 tackles, then you will be tackling a titan or the super carrier. And yeah, this is really a major change. I can understand how you used to have this ship that cannot just be tackled or cannot just be ECM'd to death or something like that, and that now that is being taken away. It's actually a pretty major loss to the pilots. But again, this does indicate, I think, that CCP wants to see these ships die. If you're using them, they want this to be a risky proposition. And it's the exact same thing with those big balls of slow cats. Here as well, they want to add risk. They want to see these ships used, sure, but also be destroyed when you make a mistake, when a fleet catches you, and things like that. So I think from that perspective, it's understandable, but it's a major loss, especially now that you will also be able to ECM, tracking, disrupt, sensor dampen, and target paint these ship. So they'll add like a resistance attribute to that, but it will still have an effect, and that's actually pretty damn major. That's like a major nerf to their capabilities in a fight. And I would say, on one hand, it's understandable if you want to see them die more. On the other hand, is that needed? I'm not entirely sure, you know. People that tend to fly these are already pretty risk averse, you know. These are major assets of really big alliances. So, okay, this is what they're planning. I'm not exactly sure if I should be for or against that. Another thing is they're going to reduce their total HP. So that they don't just become that much bigger than all the other ones. Honestly, I think that the effect of that will be rather limited, because they're also going to do the same to the amount of damage that the really big guns do to capital ships. So they just want to basically, this is the curve of HP. When you go from like subcaps and then to probably carriers, super carriers, and then titans, and they want to reduce that curve a little bit, probably so they can maybe bring in some bigger ships later on even. So Okay, understandable, and I actually think that the net effect of this will be pretty damn limited. All the Excel modules, including guns, will get Tech 2 variants, meta variants, and faction variants. That's going to well, basically be a huge boost to the economy. That is not so much something that I think is going to have an actual influence on how capital ships are being flown or anything like that. It just makes an optimal capital a little bit more expensive, but this is an economic thing. There's a lot of new modules that will need to be farmed, built, created. From that perspective, I think that this is actually pretty interesting. Another thing, they are going to allow Dreadnoughts to have a specific weapon called high angle weapon batteries. For now, keep in mind all of this is subject to change. That's going to be specific in their fights against sub-capitals. On the other hand, the current weapons will be greatly nerfed when it comes to their effectiveness against sub-capitals again. And this, in my opinion, means that they want to have a bit more of a rock, paper, scissors situation when it comes to the capitals. If you're planning to fight a sub-capital fleet, or you're being attacked by a sub-capital fleet, and you then specifically fit your dreadnoughts to fight those, you can do that. But if then you encounter some other capitals that are fit for capital warfare, you're gonna get shredded to pieces. So it's a bit of having to make a choice depending on the situation, and having that choice have a meaning as well. So that, yeah, there are consequences to fitting the wrong modules. There are consequences when you actually do see the situation for exactly what it is. And if you can then bring a dreadnought with sub-capital weapons in a sub-capital fight, it won't be that much more effective, but you'll have this huge ship that will be effective in that fight, and it will be a great force multiplier. Of course, if the enemy can then respond with a well-fitted dreadnought, they can destroy yours, etc. But it's all about keeping that a bit more flowing than the current Gnostic doctrines, which yeah, apparently it's definitely the most well-known one. Just pack as many carriers as you can into the remote repping big ball of insurmountable HP, and well, that's pretty much it. There's no real counter to that. Let me see here. Capital, warp disruption, and scramblers. That's just a little thing. They'll introduce that. It'll definitely catch pretty much anything that's smaller, and possibly other capitals as well, but not really that big of a deal. This one is, though, the carriers and the super carriers. So first of all, the dreadnoughts, they're gonna have to choose whether they want to fit their weapons for a capital engagement or a sub-capital engagement. The carriers, though, and the super carriers, they're gonna take away all their drones and all the current fighters, and they're gonna replace that with a new squadron type of gameplay. What this indicates to me is that they want to get rid of the AFK stuff. So AFK ratting, just sitting there in that big ball of carriers that remote rep each other with either sentry drones or fighter drones out, and just send it to a single target. That's they want to just basically get rid of that. This squadron type of gameplay seems like something that you have to actively do. You have to have some more battlefield awareness. And it's not going to be something that you can actually repair, these fighter squadrons. They also say that it'll take like some time to prepare a different type of squadron, so that they'll have some that'll be good against capital ships, they'll have some that'll be good against sub-capitals. From what I read here, mostly Ewar related stuff, and then they'll have others that will be good to destroy other squadrons as well. So they'll have specific uses, specific types of squadrons, but if you want to switch to one, it's not going to be instant. You'll need a little bit of a preparation time to get another squadron ready, get that out, and then have that do its thing. And honestly, I don't think that that's a bad idea, and I would like to see something similar to the refitting. Because since they understand that it's the instantness that's actually can be a problem when it comes to drones, for instance. You know, instantly be able to switch to the optimal damage type, better range, just faster drones. That's just almost instant. and the refitting to the optimal tank is also almost instant. That is actually, I think, one of the major problems, and they're gonna try to fix this for the drones with this new squadron mechanic. They could try and do something similar, I think, for the refitting, just to make that a bit more logical, less powerful, and just overall, I think, better for the capital and super capital ships. Although, of course, people that have gotten used to the current way of doing things will feel that it's a major nerf. So yeah, all these fighters will have like different abilities. If you want the details on that, check out the dev blog itself. In space control, there's some video on that, including the new camera control. I actually think that that's a pretty huge thing, if I'm not mistaken. That could be coming this winter, and that's going to be a separate video because it's actually pretty damn awesome. They'll include a tactical UI as well to be able to see what your fighter squadrons are doing. And yeah, I do think that it shows that they want this carrier gameplay to be more active, to be more about making the right choices with your squadrons, listening to your FC, deciding the right targets, but not be like an end-all, be-all fleet doctrine that you can just jump into, join the ball, and become this insurmountable power projection that just keeps growing the more people you cram into it. I think that's basically their aim. For the Titans then, they'll add some new and interesting types of doomsdays, which, well, I'll be honest, I'll just straight up come out and say it. These feel like they don't really know what they want to do with the Titans, so they're going to give them the super weapons that feel a little gimmicky, and this is going to be a real balancing act, I think. So first of all, here we have the sickle doomsday, where basically on this line they start a big laser. It'll then move to this position, and anything that is caught in between there is well, probably destroyed. If it's subcap or maybe even carriers could just basically be cut in half by this. Another one is very similar. It's called a pike, which is the same thing except it's a bigger cone, but that is completely static. So anything caught within this cone is going to be destroyed. They'll also have the Hand of God. This one is pretty interesting, and I think this one is really important because it shows what the idea is behind the doomsdays that they're creating here. So they could basically take all the sub-capitals within a region and then just get rid of them from the battlefield, put them somewhere else in the solar system, and they'll have to like warp back to rejoin the fight. And so what I think that the aim for these weapons is to get rid of the really static fights, the fights where everyone is sitting in a big ball, and where the numbers, you know, you just group as many numbers on the grid as possible, and the other side does the same thing because it's the only counter at the moment, and then just slug it out until a winner is decided or someone decides to cut their losses and retreat. I can imagine if you have like a really big ball of static ships and you can surround that with 4 or 5 Titans, they could all start using this sickle weapon in there. They could actually do major damage, force these fleets to spread out and to actually start moving and keep moving. So it's definitely interesting, but as I said, it does feel a little bit gimmicky, and I think what's really going to be important is the balancing of these weapons. How big will the cone be? How much damage will it do exactly? They'll have to be careful that it's not completely overpowered, that it doesn't just decimate engagements that have just started, for instance, and on the other hand, they also have to make sure that it's not completely useless and underpowered either, so that, well, they can actually have an impact on the battlefield as well. A very, very difficult proposition to do, in my opinion. So yeah, there you go. That's a little bit of an overview on the planned changes. None of this is specific in number and still subject to change. They definitely want your comments. So I would say if you're a part of a Nullsic alliance, and if you have a lot of time, money invested in capitals and super capitals already, definitely make your voice heard here. Go to the comments and start posting your feedback. From my perspective, you know, I can't say that I consider this good or bad. The one thing that I like are all the new modules, because that's great for the economy. Great industrial opportunities are there for a player like me. But in general, my feeling is that they want to get rid of the AFK stuff. They want these ships to actually die, to not be like a safe option when it comes to fleet warfare. And yeah, they want people to move around. They definitely want to get rid of the static fights. I think those are some of the aims that they want to go for. Of course, CCP tends to pack that into some more interesting types of words. So provide interactive, meaningful gameplay. Well, we'll have to wait and see how fun it is actually to control these squadrons. And if it's not very effective, it's not going to be very fun, for instance. Obtaining and mastering capital ships as well as fighting and destroying them should be a compelling aspirational goal for players. So I feel that especially the destroying part, they want that to be obtainable, even for smaller groups. And even in bigger engagements as well. Capital ships are the premier weapon for killing structures, so they want to give them a role, but that is decently limited. Capital ships should be effective in most combat situations without completely dominating the battlefield and without invalidating other ship types, which, yeah, I guess they want to make the fittings that you actually put on your ship more important. If you see a big sub-capital fight, you'll be able to bring some dreadnoughts that are specifically fit for that. But if then they come up with some capital ships of their own that are fit to counter that, well, you're not gonna get out of that anymore, for instance. So I think it's pretty interesting. I can definitely understand that there are parties here that don't like these changes. First of all, I would say the people that have invested in that from a similar gameplay perspective as mine, where they basically have trained for carriers especially, and dreadnoughts as well, to optimize their income. You know, AFK ratting in nullsec, escalations in wormhole space, things like that are going to get hit really hard by these changes, and those people will understandably be upset. Then the question you have to ask yourself, of course, is do they want to keep that big income, passive type of income going or not? I'm not saying that it's not valid gameplay, but the question can be asked is, do you want that type of gameplay to continue to persist and to be one of the best money earners in the game? And then the other ones are, of course, the super capital pilots, I think, that have already invested a lot in what are considered, of course, to be the best ships in the game, the most powerful ships in the game. And well, I could definitely understand if you're a little bit worried about some of the arsenal that they're actually going to get in return for the much higher risk now that they'll no longer be immune to Ewar, for instance. So that's a very tricky balancing act. For those people, I would say, of course, wait for the details because it's very hard to actually gauge what the actual impact is going to be for the super capitals themselves on that. Anyways, that's it, guys. That's my look at the capital and super capital rebalance that CCP is planning for now. There's still a lot of work to be done, and CCP is listening to your feedback at the moment, so it's the time to do so. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.